So what I have here is the Sony a7s Mark II, and it's a 12.2 megapixel compact system camera that Sony have developed specifically for videographers in mind. Now, if you're a bit of a tech geek like myself, you've probably already heard of the a7s Mark II and what it's capable of. But just in case you haven't, then hopefully by the end of this video, you'll understand how it can improve your videography. Now, I'm a wedding videographer by trade, and traditionally I've always used Canon 5D Mark IIs and Mark IIIs to record my video. But ever since getting my hand on this, I've decided that I've completely changed my attitude towards it. This camera is not only a fraction of the size of a DSLR, but it's also lightweight as well, which is a massive bonus when you're lugging around a lot of kit all day. Not only that, but it's a full frame camera as well, so it's not lacking on the features side. In terms of technical specs, it can shoot 4K video onto the SD card, so there's no need to plug in any external recorders. If you prefer shooting in slow motion or at higher frame rates, then you can dial it up to 50 or 100 frames per second, but you will have to use the 1080p recording mode. It's also worth noting that at 100 frames a second, it will crop into Super 35mm mode, which may affect your framing. So we found in the past that if you're using a longer lens, that it will crop in even further and kind of make it a bit unusable. So you may have to think about what type of lens you're using if you want to go to super slow-mo. One problem most videographers will come across is dealing with low light situations and the noise that's created by using higher ISOs. Not only does the Sony a7s Mark II deal with noise incredibly well, but the ISO ranges from 50 all the way to 409,600, which is pretty incredible. One thing that's sure to ruin your image quality is shaky handheld footage. Luckily, the Sony a7s Mark II has a 5-axis image stabilization system built into the camera. So straight out of the box, you can start shooting handheld and it will counteract some of that wobble that's associated with handheld shooting. I also found that the AF system on this camera is really impressive as well, especially in a run and gun situation where you just need it to lock onto targets quickly and efficiently so you can get that shot. Activating the Super 35mm mode on this camera will also allow you to use APS-C size lenses as well, which is really useful for expanding your arsenal. On the rear of the camera, the screen is able to pull away and tilt up or down, which is really good if you're using high or low shooting angles. The only downside is it does suffer a little bit from glare, especially when you're shooting in bright sunny daylight. So most of the time you're probably going to find that you're going to be using the electronic viewfinder. Truth be told, most of the time I'm using this camera, I have my eye straight up to the EVF, as not only does it shelter you from the effects of glare, but you can also view playback on there as well to make sure that your shots are pin sharp and in focus. Another feature that I find myself using all of the time is the focus magnifier, and that allows me to zoom into my frame even when I'm recording video just to check that fine focus. One of the big benefits I've found of using this camera is taking advantage of its picture profile settings. I like to set it to a really flat profile, and what that means is that although my recorded footage will look really flat, it does mean that I have a much broader dynamic range to play around with when it comes to color correction in post. Although inevitably this is an amazing piece of kit, the biggest drawback we've found is with the battery life, especially when using video mode and using the EVF. It tends to drain quite quickly. Now, Sony do provide a grip for this camera, which allows you to insert 2 batteries at one time, which is really useful, especially when you're filming for long durations and you're worried about the battery life cutting out. As soon as the first battery is dead, it will switch over to the second battery to allow you to keep filming continuously without interrupting your video recording. So if you are going to hire this camera and you are thinking about recording for long durations, we'd strongly recommend getting the grip as well.